Welcome to the Weekly Checkup, brought to you by Viral Solutions. I'm the host for today's show. Again, Ashley Frasca from the Traffic Team and from Green and Growing. Good to be back with you. Today, I've got with me in studio Dr. Donovan Christie of Anwan Regenerative Center. And you can find their location, Anwan Regenerative Center in Tucker, right outside 285 on Idlewood Road. Welcome back, Dr. Christie. Good to have you.
Hey, Ashley. How are you doing?
Really good. Always glad to have you.
It's always a pleasure.
Over the years now, it feels, we've done a couple of phone interviews, and it's just really good to be in person.
Yes, it is.
The energy we've got, the things we talk about, and your passion really comes through. Dr. Christie, for folks that don't know, Super Bowl Sunday is next Sunday. So we're right in between the holidays, which we were just all gluttonous over the holidays. Super Bowl Sunday, we're going to eat a lot of junk food. So the topic you come to the table with today, I think is perfectly appropriate.
Yes. Yeah, I'll be talking about obesity. And, you know, it's a term that people really don't like that term. So I like to use overweight or just large-sized bodies because obesity has a negative connotation. But it is the most preventable cause of disease. You know, it brings about so many different disease processes, you know, including heart disease, lung disease, liver disease, and cancer.
So think about it. We struggle enough with the things that we can't control. You just named, and that's not even the extensive list, the things that we are actually able to take control of with proper weight management.
Preventable.
Right.
It's preventable. But, you know, I don't really blame people when they come to me and they're 100 pounds overweight, 150 pounds overweight. I think that the population, in a sense, has been victimized by manufacturers, and it's a little bit greed. If you know a food is not good for the body and it doesn't nourish the body, then you need to be educated enough not to put it in your body, because the body needs fuel and it needs nutritious fuel. Processed foods are no good for the body.
It's such a catch-22. The processed foods are the ones that are more easily accessible, sometimes cheaper.
Absolutely.
And that are more available on the go, which we're all so busy. How do you balance that?
Well, I think that it's a matter of priority. Your nutrition and your activity level and the way you manage your stress, you have to be able to be in charge of that. You cannot let other things take a priority for your health. It's just the bottom line. Yeah, I can tell you about people who make 6 figures, 7 figures, and if they lose their health, then what is it all worth? You can't chase money and materialism when your health is the detriment. So no, I think you need to prioritize your health. You need to be educated about what you're putting in your body, because it's out there. You know, if you're eating bleached flour, you're going to have a lot more sugar in your body. And what does that do? That causes the hormone insulin to go up, and then sugar is stored in the body with fat. So it produces fat. And each fat cell just gets bigger and bigger. And, you know, fat is not a benign tissue. It is an inflamed tissue. It produces inflammation in the body, which is what brings about heart disease. Inflammation. It brings about liver disease, fatty liver. It brings about heart disease because you can get fat deposited in the heart, in the muscle of the heart, constricting the heart, preventing good flow. So we just have to be educated about what we're putting in our bodies.
Now, what determines, and perhaps it's genetics, where those fat cells are deposited? You know, everyone carries their weight different in different places. You said in some cases fat deposits are in the heart. But when it's visible on someone, what controls that?
Well, I think it's hormonal. You know, with women, some women carry their fat on their hips. Others will carry it on their buttocks. Some carry it top heavy, you know, in their breasts, their neck, their face, and then others in their belly. You'll see most men carry their fat in their belly. That's more of a testosterone-driven phenomenon, whereas women have more estrogen, so they're going to have an estrogenoid, more of a hip, buttocks type of lower fat. So yeah, that's what actually dictates where your fat go. But once you reach a certain fat mass, then it's going to go into the tissue. It's going to go around the liver. It's going to go around the kidneys. And then it can go around into your heart and around the heart.
So we have the opportunity, if it's deposited the way I think of it, maybe, just below our skin, just inside of our skin, is it easier to get rid of with proper exercise and nutrition before it gets into the tissue?
Yeah, of course. It's more accessible for burning. But we have what we call visceral fat. Visceral fat is the fat I was talking about. It goes inside the organs.
Okay.
That's inside. The subcutaneous fat is the fat that's right outside of the skin. And, we see those. But what we're not seeing is the visceral fat. And that's the fat that leads to chronic disease, right? And so we just have to be very educated about what we're putting in our bodies so that we can produce maximum health and longevity.
So speaking with Dr. Donovan Christie of Anwan Regenerative Center, and something you mentioned, taking care of our bodies by not eating as much processed foods. You gave an example with the flour, but give us a few more examples of what you mean by processed. Does that mean a bag of chips? Does that mean there's a difference in one of the fruits or vegetables I'm eating over another?
Well, anything that's processed is not a whole grain. You can't pick it from a tree. You can't dig it from the ground as a root. You can't chase it down and capture it and kill it. So many things are processed now that it's so hard for people to understand, what's going on with their food supply. But when I say processed, I'm also talking about genetically modified foods. I'm talking about the genetic engineering of our foods. It's not natural, right? So man, us, as human beings, we're not smarter than the powers that be, God, right? He created things in a certain way. And we manipulate that to maximize profit. It's never about health. It's always about profits. So why do we bleach? Why do we take wheat, that's a whole grain, and bleach it? When we do that, we're creating white flour. That flour can sit on a shelf much longer. It's about shelf life.
Oh.
Versus a whole grain flour, if you put it down, things are going to grow in it. It's alive. It can support life. When you bleach it, you're removing vitamins, you're removing fiber, you're removing minerals.
Wow.
It doesn't support life. All we have now is just empty calories, the empty sugar, which is what it breaks down to. We make donuts, crackers, cookies, cakes, pasta.
I love all of those things.
We make all of that with this white processed flour. And, when we make it with a whole grain flour, our taste buds, you have to get used to that natural eating, Many people don't want to eat that because it's a little bit harder to digest, which is good because the net calorie intake, when you're burning calories to break down a food, the net intake of calories is less. You understand?
Yeah.
But we're not thinking about that. We just want to be able to slide something in. It goes into our body. Glycemic index is high. The blood sugar rises rapidly. Insulin takes that sugar, stores it as long-chain fatty acids into the fat cells, and there you are.
Wow. So you mentioned the way our body digests it and interprets it. This may be a little off topic, but too, when you're talking about whole grains, makes me think of celiac disease and the advent in the last 10 or so years of gluten-free products and more offerings to folks as they shop at the grocery store. Where does all of that come into play?
Yeah, well, that's the protein. So gluten is a protein. But let's say, I'm going to break this down real simple. If you have a whole grain product, say wheat, and the natural constitution of that wheat product would be 25% gluten, let's say that, and then you have the rest as carbohydrates, right? When we genetically modify our food, now we have 50% gluten. So we've changed the concentration of gluten. So now the flour that we're eating has a higher percentage of gluten. It's not natural. The body, gluten is a very sticky protein. Mm-hmm. When it hits the gut, it can stick to the gut lining and produce a protein called zolulin that creates leaky gut. So now you have more people allergic to gluten than ever before because it's not the same gluten that we ate in the 60s.
So celiac disease wasn't a thing 40
years ago. It wasn't big.
Right.
I mean, you had some people that were still sensitive to gluten, but now you have a whole lot more people because the content of the flour is higher in gluten because it's genetically engineered.
Really something to think about the next time you make your grocery list, the next time you shop at the store, when you're looking at the labels, and they have to tell you by law how things are processed, what the ingredients are. High fructose corn syrup is another one that I think,
oh yeah, that's horrible too. Mm-hmm. That really just goes straight to the blood. High fructose, and it's a difficult sugar for us to metabolize.
So here with us for the next hour and a half, almost 2 hours on the weekly checkup, Dr. Donovan Christie of Anwan Regenerative Center. And next want to talk about why are folks who are a little overweight at highest risk of cancer? You may or may not be surprised by the answer, but want to fill you in on that and the things you can avoid. When we return, you're listening to the Weekly Checkup right here on 95.5 WSB. All right, back really quickly on the Weekly Checkup. I'm your host, Ashley Frasca, in for Dr. Bruce Feinberg today. The show produced by Lens, Atlanta's healthcare marketing experts. And a voice you've heard on the show today, joined by Dr. Donovan Christie of Anwan Regenerative Center. They're located in the Tucker area. And also Dr. Christie, Anwan Wellness Medical Center as well. You help folks all over the city of Atlanta.
Yes, it is. There's 2 locations there as well. There's in Hapeville. That was the first center that I started back in 2000. And then we got another center in Tucker. And then I branched out the Regenerative Center in 2015. So we have 3 locations.
So one that is looking to come work with you on managing their weight and controlling diet and all that, they would be seen at the Wellness Center.
They could be seen at any of the locations. The difference is that the Regenerative Center is a concierge practice, but the other 2 locations are regular primary care centers with an emphasis on lifestyle medicine.
Perfect. And that's what we're talking about today, and there's a lot of other things we'll get into. But don't want to alarm people. Don't want to sound like everything you do is going to kill you. There's a risk. But overweight folks are at a higher risk of cancer, and there are a lot of types of different cancers that are linked with obesity. Can you explain that?
Oh, yeah. And, it gets a little technical from the medical standpoint, but I'm going to break this down as best as
great
I can.
In the last segment, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I want you to know that 40% of all cancers are in people who are overweight or obese. Obesity puts you at risk for prostate cancer in men, right? Breast cancer in women, and colon cancer. Being obese, just being overweight. So why? Why is that an issue? As I stated earlier, the fat cells are inflammatory. They have inflammatory components to them. It's called cytokines. These cells produce inflammation. Inflammation is the root cause of most disease. Once you're impacting your growth hormone, your estrogens, your other hormone systems, because these cytokines will stimulate and cause a high insulin level, which impacts our immunity, our DNA. Once it gets into the DNA, you can get changes where that cell decides it's not going to stop dividing, and then your immune system doesn't recognize it, and then you get a small growth, which becomes a tumor, which then becomes full-blown cancer. So being overweight and obese definitely increases your chances of cancer. We don't talk much about that because we're looking at the outwards appearance. We're talking about, we're looking at high blood pressure and diabetes. Everyone knows that being overweight does that. But cancer, 40% of all cancers are in patients that are overweight or obese.
So that's really, something to think about. Proper diet, exercise, nutrition. We'll talk later in the show, your mantra too about self-care and meditation and rest as well. All of those components are very big factors. And exercise, very big components in your overall health and wellness. So how many folks out there that are listening, here we are into the second month of the year, maybe they had New Year's resolutions and they've already messed them up. They've already given them up. It's not too late. Let's just call them goals. You don't have to meet them the first month of the year, okay? You can have a goal. It's not too late. So when we come back with Dr. Christie of Anwan Regenerative Center, I'd like to talk about weight loss programs.
This is what I'm here to talk about today, really. It's the 12 Weeks to Wellness program, which we have going on in all the centers. And the main component is that we need to be able to get coached. Because it's hard to do it by yourself.
There's a lot of things. It's hard to do alone. So he has the staff, the knowledge, and the people that are there to help you. So stay tuned for all of that. When we return, it's Ashley Frasca hosting the Weekly Checkup on your Sunday. You're listening to 95.5 WSB.